The significance of the American Songbook, we could talk about that for days, of course, but the American Songbook is one of mankind's greatest legacies, I think, especially in our country. We have certain art forms that are distinctly American. There's jazz, there's blues, but as related to that, of course, the great American popular song, as it evolved in the 20s and the 30s and 40s with great songwriters like Gershwin, Cole Porter, Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn, others who, some connected to jazz, some not connected to jazz, Richard Rodgers, Johnny Mercer. The list is long and the quality is staggeringly high. Well, these songs set a model for me of quality, of integrity, craft, and any number of things. It's interesting to me how people of my generation and younger people too, even though we're trying to stay tuned into what's going on now, to the contemporary songwriting of today, the contemporary compositions of today, it seems almost inevitable that we start looking back at where the songwriting craft of today came from. We seem to always be anchoring what we do with the great work of Gershwin's, Cole Porter, and all those other people that I mentioned earlier. And by extension, we're starting to have the Great American Songbook used to mean the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, but we've got to consider the 60s and the 70s and 80s now, and maybe branch out and consider the American/British Songbook. We've got Paul McCartney and John Lennon. I mean, those are classics by any stretch of the imagination. We've got Stevie Wonder. We've got Paul Simon. We've got Carole King. It's an endless source of inspiration and endless source of discovery. There's great songs out there that we can never, ever, well, as a musician, there's always some more to learn. There's never going to be a shortage of great material from the immediate past or the more distant past to go along with what's happening now. And for me, the more compelling songwriters of today, the last couple of generations perhaps, the more compelling people in that genre are the ones who are tuned in to the heritage of this music too. People like Jason Mraz. He's a great songwriter, but you can be sure he understands where all of this came from. And that's why his music's so strong, it has such depth. It's a staggering, wonderful thing, the Great American Songbook, and I've been a sucker for it forever.
Well, to you, Willis, what makes a great song?
Great song. What makes a great song? What makes a great song that's going to last? I mean, I can reframe your question a little bit, but it's got to be, there's a certain simplicity there, a certain directness to a song. So the musical idea may need to be very direct and not too many musical ideas all at once. But there's also a certain sophistication to go along with that simplicity. And there's a craft and real care with the way the music fits the words. And, that's when I get back to Gershwin and Cole Porter and Richard Rodgers and Johnny Mercer. They were all, Carole King. These were all smart, literate people who were also fantastic musicians. So they took care and take care in the writing of a great song. But a great song, it may have one or two musical hooks, and then you weave it together, and in 32 measures you may have something that lives forever. Starting a vocal jazz program, I can't claim to have expertise in that area. I just know that I like working with jazz vocalists and people like Five by Design are continuing inspiration for me. How to start it, I've got some thoughts about what needs to happen to make it fly. I think, of course, you need somebody who's heading this program up that, in my view, has this respect for the tradition singing and great music, quality songs. You can have all of the wonderful technical prowess in the world, but if the material is not very good, then something's missing. So there's needs to be a sensitivity both to vocal technique, I would say, but also understanding what music is great and what music is maybe not so great. And of course, that's what a music school is supposed to do. We're supposed to try to impart some kind of value system to students so that they can learn how to evaluate music, understand why this piece has been performed for 200 years. Mozart's great for a number of reasons. We know he's great, but we're supposed to try to help students understand why. We know that Johnny Mercer's great. I think he's the greatest lyricist who ever lived. But we need to understand why. And that's what a vocal jazz program needs to teach too, not just how to sing tight harmony and how to mesh with a rhythm section, but they need to also figure out how to teach these musical values so that the program sustains itself. Of course, you need a core group of faculty. And a lot of music schools don't have the resources to hire 2 or 3 expert people to make a program like this go. But in my view, it's more and more important as younger musicians have to try to figure out new ways of carving their niche in the musical world. Music schools are going to need to evolve. And perhaps even the notion of the vocal jazz group is going to have to evolve in the future too. Because, after all, like I said earlier, there's classic song now that was written in the 70s. And for me, that sounds like the recent past, but it's now part of the classical songwriting tradition. And so we've got to make sure that the whole notion of the vocal jazz idiom embraces all the right parameters. But also it's part of what a school's mission is all about. And a school of music needs to embrace great music, whether it's Beethoven or Duke Ellington. I didn't answer that question very well. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm not sure how to implement a good vocal jazz program and keep it going. I need to rely on the experts. This project that Five by Design is working on, that's behind my project, is about, of course, ultimately about singing and great music. When you boil it down to its essence, what they represent and what we would hope that vocal jazz enterprise would represent, its musical excellence. And I think schools of music ignore too much the great legacy of American, we can call it popular music if you want, but it's a lot of it rises to the level of art music. It just happens to be, maybe it was the popular music of a certain time, but you can't say that Gershwin songs are anything other than art songs. They're just perfect gems. But I hope that future generations who are in positions of leadership are able to kind of broaden the scope of a jazz studies department or a vocal department. We need to kind of re-examine the way we do things sometimes to make sure that we're serving the needs of young students who want to become professionals themselves, give them the tools they need, give them some opportunities that they need, which is a difficult thing. It was a lot easier for me to get opportunities to do my thing back in the 70s and 80s than it is for a student now in the second decade of the 21st century. It should be an exciting time for folks right now who are trying to do music. As difficult as it is, it's always been difficult to figure out how to make a living doing music. But we do it anyway because it's such a wonderful life.